Welcome back to CryptoZonZ, peer-to-peer financial empowerment, hashtag love all, serve others. How to speak Bitcoin, episode 2, distributed ledger technology. In this video, we're going to go in depth a little bit about DLT. Some people call it triple ledger accounting, but it's more, there's a difference between that and distributed ledger technology. In the rest of this video, I'll just say DLT for obvious reasons. As I discuss this, I'm going to be speaking and saying such words as BTC or Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, D.C.E.P, which stands for Digital Currency Electronic Payment, which is the Chinese digital yuan. And I will mention a term known as A.S.I.C. It stands for Application Specific Integrated Circuit. And I'll mention and speak on such words like blockchain, nodes, consensus algorithm, those kinds of things. But when I say I'll speak on it or go a little bit in depth, I do mean a little, because this is by no means intended to be a definitive video on the subject, but just more or less something to help you out at the water cooler, if you know what I'm saying. And for those who want to go a little bit deeper, I'll provide a link here to the Satoshi white paper, which is an iconic 9-page paper that you might find a little bit interesting. It was launched in October of 2008, announcing the soon-to-be internet-launched Genesis block of Bitcoin, which launched on January 3rd, 2009. If you're new to this channel, I appreciate it if you like and subscribe. I'll consider it an act of kindness since it's free. And if you're not new to this channel but haven't liked and subscribed, and click that notifier bell, I appreciate it if you do. It just really will be an act of kindness. It'll help others to have access to this information as well. So, also, I have this video will be in a playlist entitled How to Speak Bitcoin, and I'll have other playlists there for you to peruse too. But what is distributed ledger technology, or DLT? What it is a distributed database of information out onto nodes onto the internet. And what makes a DLT a ledger is agreement amongst all of those nodes. Simply put, an open source distributed or DLT like Bitcoin, what it does, it employs nodes on the internet which are independent verifiers of the project's transactions. And what they do is you have to come to agreement for consensus. And when there is an update announced to the Bitcoin client, for example, then all of these nodes independently throughout all the earth have to converge and say what they believe is the correct version of that blockchain or the correct version of that DLT project. And these technologies employ something else that is called a consensus algorithm. And when there's an update, the way that they get agreement is when they reach 51% consensus. And that is then regarded as the correct and true version of that advancement or that version of the enhancement, if you will. It's a way to add value to the network in the form of adding security and integrity and veracity, which denotes truth and correctness. So I have a friend who, back in 2015, he describes himself to this day as a hacker. And he's still a gamer, but back then, when I started getting interested in Bitcoin and peer-to-peer fintech, open-sourced DLT, we started conversating about it, and he decided to download the client onto his computer. He had the latest, greatest update of a chip, and albeit a home-based computer chip, but what he did is he downloaded the entire Bitcoin client onto his hard drive, but it took him like a day and a half to do, and he was like, hey, forget this. And if he would have succeeded to do that and continued on, completing that client, then he would have had an ability to be a node and then to enter in his version or his choices, which blockchain is the correct enhancement of the blockchain. What a blockchain is just a bundle of data that's bundled up into a block, and it's added on to the previous chain of blocks. The chains are adhered to each other or connected, associated with each other by an identifying hash, which relates it back to it enables it to become whole as one with the previous blockchain history. In other words, in Bitcoin's case, every 10 minutes it becomes a completely different new whole because there's a new block that's added. They add blocks every 10 minutes, and then whoever solves the computational problem for that block and verifies it first, verifies the veracity of it, they get rewarded with Bitcoins. And the monetary policy of Bitcoin is such that it's designed right into its client, a dynamic that is called halving. It's a programmatic design that can't be changed. But what it means is every 10 blocks, there's a new block added, and then whoever solves that problem will be rewarded Bitcoin for it. Now, on May 11th of 2020 at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, they cut the rate of that block reward from what was 12.5 Bitcoins every 10 minutes, or for every block, down to 6.25 Bitcoins are rewarded to the miner who solves that problem first. And in about another 4 years, in 2024, the reward every 10 minutes for the miner who solves that computational problem first will be rewarded with 3.125 Bitcoins. And so that is a monetary policy that is designed right into that DLT. Litecoin's project is exactly identical to Bitcoin's, except that in a few minor ways. One of the ways that it differs is that its blocks are mined every 2.5 minutes. So that enabled Litecoin to get some traction as a new project early on, as a test ground for some of the things that may be advanced or added onto as far as features onto the client. Ethereum, their DLT has added features like smart contracts onto their distributed ledger technology, which is a massively important and powerful financial technology that has really gained a lot of traction. We have the D.C.E.P, which stands for Digital Currency Electronic Payment. It is the digitized version of the Chinese yuan, and they just launched it out to 500 million people earlier this week. That, it's about 15% of the global populace. So this is of massive importance. It is the first beta. Previous to that, they did try some trials in 4 different economic regions within their country, but this is something of a very, very important note. But one thing that we have to be aware of in DLT is the difference between an open source DLT and a closed source DLT. Bitcoin is open source because the controls of it are to the people at large who use that client. But with D.C.E.P, the monetary policy of that one, it's a closed guard because the controls of the monetary policy are closed to the Chinese government, or more specifically the PBOC, the People's Bank of China. And so it makes it a closed garden. Now, Libra was a project inspired by Mark and the Facebook Foundation. The Libra project it's a DLT project, but it is also a closed garden DLT because the monetary policy they're going to employ in theirs is, Mark has talked about pegging the Libra to a basket of currencies. He's talked about getting the Chinese yuan. That probably won't happen now, but also the Japanese yen, the British pound sterling, the dollar. But so whether the DLT is open or closed is a very, very important thing, but most definitely cryptocurrencies, a true cryptocurrency is open source DLT, where there's no controls on it. There's no, it's open source. It's not controlled, say, by 5 people or 10 people or even 1 million people. It's controlled by the internet or the open market on there. What I alluded to earlier, where my friend downloaded the client onto his computer, in becoming a node and verifying the veracity or the integrity of a blockchain project, what that does is adds security. And since Bitcoin has been doing this update every 10 minutes, that it is, to this point, it's never been hacked. And it is essentially unhackable because with every 10 minutes, it becomes a wholly new blockchain just by adding that one onto the whole. And in other words, what that does is it adds to security and the further hackability. With every 10 minutes that goes on, it becomes harder and harder to hack, because if someone were to hack the Bitcoin protocol, they would have to do it within a 10-minute period. See what I'm saying? The purpose of blockchains is to verify the transactions, to add integrity and security. That's the main purpose of DLT. And the reason why they've gained so much importance and traction in the world as a whole, one example of that is that Ernst & Young, which is one of the world's largest corporations, I mean, they are heavily promoting the use of distributed ledger technology, and especially through the Ethereum project per se. But they crunch numbers, and they have promoted DLT usage to many of the Fortune 500 companies. And the reason why this is so important is because in the 80s, up until all through eternity, up until the 80s, ledgers were done by hand, essentially paper and pen. But with the onset of the internet, and then also especially the computing power, and because it uses electricity, then the speed of the logging and computation of those transactions is electric, and it saves time and then therefore money. And it also minimizes human error, which is of course of massive value. So these are some main reasons why DLTs are important. It is the new standard of excellence. And it bodes very, very well for CBDCs or central bank digital currencies, which are closed. They will all be closed guard in DLTs. But it also bodes well for the future and in success and value, upticking value of even open projects like Bitcoin and Ethereum and Litecoin and even corporate currencies like Libra, just simply because of its excellence. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I super appreciate your time, and I hope that this has added some ability for you to speak Bitcoin at the water cooler. I just wish you well. I mean, what I want to say first is hashtag love all, serve others. I wish you well. I wish you wealth. I wish you health. And until next time, peace.